Hey, hey, hey. Time for another out of this world story from rSpace. Be careful who you let step through your front door. They might try to replace you in your own home. Today on rSpace, a wife takes brothers in arms to a whole new low. Wife cheated on me with my best friend while I was deployed, so I threw both of them out of the house. I'm 35 male, married to my wife, Grace, for 10 years. We have a 6-year-old son, Jamie. It was the most perfect and stable marriage, and with her, I never felt any sort of discomfort. I have known her since we were kids, as she was my sister's best friend. She was a caring, soft-spoken person who left her job for our son. You see, our son was born with muscular dystrophy. He needed both of our support, but leaving our work was indeed a difficult decision to make. I came from a family of servicemen. My father was a staff sergeant, and I'm in the Army. Because of that, I was rarely present for my family, and all the responsibility was on her shoulders, which made me feel selfish and an absent father. But Grace never minded that and supported me throughout. I wanted to be there and support my son, but my job didn't allow me. And with constant care and surveillance under the eyes of Grace, Jamie has been doing a lot better. Our marriage was going smoothly, and things were just normal and peaceful. I was so grateful to have something in my life that was rare these days. In my last vacation, I spent most of my time with Grace and Jamie. I made sure to look out for Jamie's growth and development. Grace also got some time off from her never-ending motherly duties. We had a lot of fun, and I never saw Grace this happy because it was the longest duration of time I stayed back. I and Grace have a mutual best friend, Bucky, whom we have known since our school years. We were great friends and always had each other's backs. Bucky's call broke our hearts. He was going through a rough divorce. His wife's cruel tactics made him homeless and jobless, and he had nowhere to go. Grace and I offered him to stay at our guest house on the patio. At first, I had a very bad feeling about bringing him here and leaving him alone with Grace, but since we had known each other for so long and Bucky was a very disciplined man, he never laid eyes on any other woman other than his wife, nor did he ever flirt or do anything fishy in his life. I trusted him, and I trusted my wife a lot. I went to his place and brought him here with us. He was very stressed. Leaving Bucky here turned out good for Grace initially, as he would help her out, and for the time being, she would be less burdened by things and have company because both our families live in different cities. I still couldn't get my thoughts straight and kept thinking about the divorce rate in the lives of Army men and whether leaving him at my house was a good idea or not. What if I dug my own grave? I felt disgusted of my thoughts and managed to stay calm and trust them, as Bucky needed our support. And it wasn't a favor, but the responsibility of a best friend. I and Grace talked to him and helped him manage his situation. We both asked him to stay here as long as he got his issues settled down. A week later, I got a call from the lieutenant, and I knew it was an urgent deployment call. I felt uneasy picking it up because I didn't want to leave just yet. I knew I would get a call, but not this soon. I informed Grace and Bucky. They were disappointed and wanted me there with them. Jamie was asleep, so I kissed him and left my things immediately. Throughout my journey, I kept wondering if I had made the right decision, and with all honesty, I didn't. Things went down the drain after I was deployed. You make your decision on the basis of how trustworthy a person is, and sometimes it's unpredictable. It's been 6 months since I came back from my vacation, leaving Bucky at my home, and during the whole 6 months, my conversations with Grace got shorter and shorter to just one call and a text in a week. My inbox used to be filled with long paragraphs about how grateful she was. We used to FaceTime even if it was for 5 seconds, but everything completely changed in just 6 months. I'm not familiar with such treatment, and it is not something usual either. Most of my calls go unanswered nowadays. I have gotten pretty irritated by all these and overthink a lot about the situation on my head. Last week, I called Bucky and asked him if he knew where Grace was. He was breathing heavily and sounded exhausted. He told me Grace had started working in the daycare where our son Jamie goes. At first, I was happy that she was doing something to make her feel free, but at the same time, learning about this from someone else made me feel sad. Sometimes I felt like leaving the job because it was not only Grace's responsibility to take care of Jamie. After a while, I got a call from Grace, and I immediately asked her what Bucky told me and why she hadn't informed me about that. She apologized and told me that she was hesitant because it might make me upset, but I was going to know sooner or later. I forgave her and talked to her about different things before asking if everything was okay between us, and her reply put me in shambles. First of all, we have never been through situations where I ever asked her such a question, and even then, she used to assure me, but this time it was just an unusual, "yeah," with an immediate hang-up call. These days, she's never in a mood to talk and is always tired. Am I just overthinking about the situation, or is it something I should really be worried about? How interesting. Perhaps it's time to navigate these troubled waters with the precision of a military strategist, OP. Overthinking might be the enemy here, but some good old communication might just be able to fix things. It's understandable that you'd be hurt by this, especially when Bucky knew before you. That can kind of feel like betrayal. It's important for partners to be transparent with each other and to feel like they can tell each other anything. The weight of things unsaid is a heavy one. Update 1. Thanks for all the support. Yeah, you guys are right. Life of an army man is indeed very difficult, especially when it comes to marriages and relationships. I don't know why women marry an army man knowing that they would be away for most of the days, then end up cheating and using the distance and absence as an excuse. Turns out my instincts were right. After all my military training couldn't be wrong. I lived with my anxiety for another month, but I couldn't eat or sleep and had zero concentration at work. So I asked my general for an urgent leave. In fact, I'm guilty of admitting that I had to lie about my health to leave for home. I didn't inform either of them, and I left for home unannounced. As soon as I reached home, I saw Jamie playing outside. There was quite an improvement in his condition. I took him up in my arms and went inside. As I opened the door, a sudden wave of anxiety rushed down on my nerves as I was thinking of various obscene conclusions and expected the worst scenario behind her cold behavior. I saw Bucky sitting shirtless on the sofa, doing some work, whereas Grace was wearing her nightgown and watching TV. Looking at the way she was dressed made me feel so uneasy, as it was not appropriate to go around the house in front of another man wearing your nightgown, even if you had known that person for so long. I put down Jamie and greeted both of them. Trust me when I say there was indeed something going on, because the look on Grace's face was not even close to happiness, but disappointment for my arrival. And Bucky, on the other hand, looked terrified. The room had an awkward air around us. She came and hugged with fake happiness, which was visible, but Bucky's body language was also speaking of something else. At first, I thought maybe the overthinking created all the resentment in my heart, and I was overlooking this, but my thoughts and instincts were getting sharper and sharper every day. The little details of reading between the lines were telling me a whole different story. After I settled down, Bucky told me that he was still going through the divorce process and was also busy finding a job, and soon he would leave for another place. I went to the bathroom and freshened myself up, but something caught my eye and shattered my world into pieces. While I was unpacking my toiletries in the washroom, something fell off my hand and got stuck in the corner of the basin. I bent down to fetch it, but instead found a used condom lying under the basin. It looked like it was stuck in the corner for a few days and remained unnoticed. It gave me chills down my spine. I wanted to hunt them down and kill them both. You can call me petty, but I chose to humiliate them before pulling up the condom on their face and asking about it. I came out and went downstairs where Grace and Bucky were laughing about something. As soon as I got there, the laughter went silent, and I felt like a third person. I couldn't control my irritation and asked them what they were laughing about, to which Bucky shut me up by saying that it was just an inside joke. I grabbed Grace from behind and kissed her in front of Bucky, but she immediately removed herself from me by faking a laugh and asking me to stop. I told them that it looked like someone was having fun there because I found a used condom under the basin. They both turned pale and looked at each other confused. Bucky said he brought his friend home a week ago and they hooked up. I asked which friend because Bucky was my childhood friend and we knew almost all of each other's friends. He said she was someone he met recently at a bar. It's nothing serious, just a fling. Although I wasn't fully satisfied, I let it slide. I wanted to dig out more information about them, but on the next day, Jamie suffered severe leg pain. The pain got so severe that the doctor told me that they needed to admit him for a week. I decided to spend the night with Jamie and asked Grace to go home. She wanted to stay, but her presence disgusted me. To get rid of her, I told her that I was back so I could take care of him and she could take some time off from her motherly duties. These days are getting more stressful. My anger is just piling up inside of me with the thought that they too are still together in the house. Last night, the doctor asked me for Jamie's last prescription as he wanted to check something. It was at home. I called Grace many times to send me the pictures of the prescription, but she didn't respond to my calls. It made me even more furious. And this time, Bucky didn't pick up either. I had to leave Jamie alone for a while and drive home to get the prescription. I angrily walked towards the house and heard them laughing and talking. I opened the door and angrily asked Grace where her phone was and how she could be so irresponsible. They both checked their phones and said sorry it was on silent mode. I asked Grace where she got the audacity to party and enjoy while our son was going through something. She snapped back at me and told me that this was the first time I was doing something for Jamie, so I shouldn't act all responsible as she had been taking care of him for years. I told her not to play the blame game as it was both our responsibility. I went in, got the prescription, and headed outside. Grace kept asking me about what happened and if she could come with me, but I told her to enjoy herself and left for the hospital. After an hour or so, Bucky came to see Jamie, and after that, we both sat on the bench. Out of the blue, he asked me if everything was okay, and I told him yes, it was. Bucky tapped on my shoulder and told me that I could share anything with him and that I always had his back. He also said that I should try to understand Grace's behavior, as women do when they miss us a lot, and also that she was stressed because of Jamie. I wanted to knock his head out, but I somehow controlled myself for the sake of my son. I just nodded and went inside Jamie's room. I'm just waiting for my son to get discharged before I uncover all the truth about my wife and my so-called friend. It is just so suffocating for me to swallow everything. I had to make this update to flow out my emotions. Ew. I'm sorry Bucky literally tried to tell you to see where she was coming from and passively aggressively hint at being a better partner. And as for finding the condom in the bathroom, your hunch sounds correct. Even if Bucky brought a friend and did that deed, that's still your house. That's under your roof. That's a total lack of respect there, and no matter what the circumstance is. Update 2. Yeah, it's been a while because I was busy dealing with the mess. The whole week when Jamie was admitted to the hospital just went like that. And even in the hospital, I kept thinking of how Grace's hair smelled like Bucky and the condom that was there. I refused to believe that Bucky had brought another woman, and it was for her. The day Jamie was discharged, I was coming down from his room and I saw Bucky jokingly spanking Grace's butt while she was coming out of the kitchen. I felt so mad and nauseated that I shouted at them. They weren't expecting me to see that. In a moment of rage, I threatened to throw him out of there if he ever came close to Grace. They both looked surprised at me. Bucky apologized and went back to his room. My son had still not recovered fully. I didn't want to blow up the situation and make it difficult for him, so I swallowed my anger. When I went to my room, Grace got frustrated at me about how I talked to Bucky and that I shouldn't have talked to him like that knowing he was going through something. I remained silent and asked her if it was okay for me to just sit and watch someone spank my wife. Her eyes softened, and she told me that she was only furious about my tone and nothing else. I asked her why let him enter inside the boundary lines and let him do something like that. She turned defensive, saying that I was claiming her to be a cheater. It led to a huge fight between us. Her point was that Bucky was our childhood friend, hence she was close to him and nothing else. I was not delusional, but their behavior was completely different. The Grace I knew never liked getting close to any man other than me, but using the title of best friend as a shield to their actions. Once I noticed that she was sitting beside him and he casually patted her thighs. Bucky sometimes grabbed her by the waist. A few days later, I came downstairs and Grace was doing the dishes in the kitchen. Bucky didn't see me and hugged her from behind, and they both laughed. As soon as they saw me, they stood straight and stiff. I looked at him and asked him to continue hugging her, and he started explaining that it wasn't like that. I told him to pack his things and leave immediately. After hearing my statement, Grace looked devastated. She came towards me and asked me to stop doing this, and I glared at her with angry eyes and told her if she enjoyed this so much, she could also leave with him. As soon as Bucky left, Grace started a huge argument with me, saying that I did something really stupid and that I was forgetting the times he helped us out. I punched my hand on the wall and asked her the same question. Why did he keep touching her when I already asked her to maintain her distance? If he could touch you in front of me, I don't know what you guys might be doing behind my back. Grace had tears in her eyes and asked me how I could accuse her of something like that. I told her that whatever was going on in front of my eyes led me to such assumptions. We saw Jamie coming downstairs and immediately stopped our argument. Grace left for daycare service and I decided to spend some time with Jamie and show him our wedding photographs. As I was showing him our wedding pictures, he stopped his fingers on one picture where I and Grace were kissing, and what he said was a hard pill to swallow. He said that I was kissing Mommy the way Uncle Bucky kisses her. I closed the album and sat there with my palms on my face. I never thought that bringing Bucky into my home was like bringing someone in between our marriage, and I can't put all the blame on Bucky but Grace because she was my wife and the mother of my child. But because of her desires, she took away our son's childhood, making him witness something that he will remember as an adult and would carry resentment against her. I never would have imagined hating Grace or the hatred that would appear in Jamie's heart. After what Jamie told me, I couldn't sit in peace and had many impulsive thoughts in my head. I wanted to destroy Bucky, but he was already homeless, so I decided to meet him. I called him and asked him to meet me. I told him not to mention this to Grace, as this was about something personal that I needed advice on before telling her. He agreed. Maybe it was his guilt that he didn't say anything to Grace about the meeting. I told him straightforwardly that ever since I came back, something weird was happening around me and Grace, as if we both got hexed or something. He laughed and asked me if he was okay in the head to believe such gibberish. But then, I told him in a serious tone that, believe me, since the day I came back, I noticed something was off, as Grace's hair smelled like you, and it can't happen until you both lay next to each other. The smile on his face turned to fear. I wanted him to confess because I was done with their infidelity hiding under a friend's game. I can't believe that my own best friend was effing my wife, or that my wife was effing my best friend. He started apologizing and asked me to give him a chance to explain, and I told him not to lie, as I had already known the truth from Jamie. He couldn't say anything and started crying in the cafe. His face showed deep regret and guilt, and as I was going outside, he followed me, but I didn't stop and went back to my place. I couldn't cry. I just felt an ache in my heart and pure anger. I've heard enough stories from my teammates about their wives cheating that I just couldn't cry, and I laughed that I was also the victim of it. True loyalty is often checked during times of distance, and she failed miserably. After that, I went to meet my lawyer friend who recommended his colleague, who was a divorce lawyer, for my case. I gave the details to him and asked him to prepare the divorce papers. I went home and saw Grace was already there. She hugged me smilingly. I pushed her away and asked her if she liked me on the bed better than Bucky. Before she could turn defensive, I told her that Bucky had already made his confession and she could stop lying now. I asked her if she would slap Jamie because he was the one who told me about the kiss. She remained silent and then went completely insane and started apologizing like crazy. I sat there and watched the whole show, and trust me, it was entertaining enough for me to realize that she had no remorse. She told me she never had any intention of doing that, but as I was away, she felt lonely, and that pushed her to do something like that. She became distant from me and started liking Bucky's presence, and after I came back, she realized her mistake. I stopped her right there and told her that she didn't realize her mistake and would have continued doing that, but because she was caught, she had to make up a remorseful story. After my deployment, she would have done the same thing again. She started begging me to believe her, and I looked away, feeling disgusted. I told her that the divorce papers would be here in 5 days and she should be prepared. She pleaded to me that it was just a one-time mistake, and at least for Jamie, can we not go to that extent? I looked into her eyes and told her that the reason behind the divorce was our son, because I couldn't let him grow up in the house where he was witnessing such things, and God knows what else. She kept telling me that my decision was impulsive, but I left the place immediately. The divorce paper reached Grace in 2 days, and she signed it. Before that, there was a constant attempt from her family trying to save the marriage, but I stayed stubborn. Due to my deployment and because I was not present that much, I got Jamie into a boarding school for special children where he would be under constant care and surveillance, and would also get a proper education. I left Jamie at the boarding school and promised him that I would visit him often, and he was happy about that. It was indeed the hardest thing to do. I called Jamie almost every day, and sometimes he told me that Mommy came to visit him, and I didn't have any problem with that, though. Working in the military didn't help me with my mental health. Wow, I'm so sorry, OP. This is a tough pill to swallow, and the fact that they were doing this right in front of your son. Their behavior and adulterous ways are completely disgusting. The fact that he was putting his hands on your wife right in front of you is putrid. How did they think that was okay? I'm so sorry this was all happening while you were working so hard at making a living. Wishing you and your son all the best moving forward. What do you make of this? Would you have left your best friend with your wife? Tell us why or why not in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon on rSpace.